It's Baseball at the Corner. This is the Michigan Trumbull Podcast with your hosts, Alex S. Freeman and Luke Jaconis. All right, everybody, welcome to episode 13, lucky number 13 of the Michigan Trumbull Podcast. Luke, how are you doing this weekend? In a bright orange polo today.
Yeah, bright orange polo. I gotta go that way. Yeah, you get the white. Oh man, everything's backward on the StreamYard thing. So we got the white D, the orange polo. This one's a bit thicker than the one I had on the show on Thursday. But yeah, I love it. As I said, golf polos are just the best. And I went golfing this morning. I got my butt kicked by my father, so that's always nice. And to answer your original question, I'm good.
Good. Yeah, I've got a. Let's see if I get. Yeah, same thing, same problem. I got a Red Wings pullover on right now. And we may mention this later in the show. It's in the show notes. But did you know when the NHL paused, the only team mathematically eliminated from the playoffs were the Detroit Red Wings?
Oh, they're that bad of a team?
They were awful this year. I mean, they've been awful for the past couple of years. But yeah, I mean, just basement, which is really depressing because for 20 plus straight years they didn't miss the playoffs. And so it's been a long adjustment in my life, because from basically when I was born until my mid-20s they were just a constant dominating force in hockey, and it has been a rough ride the past few years.
Well, kind of, I mean, I think I've said it on the show before, full disclosure, I'm not a big hockey fan, not a huge basketball fan. I got a little bit more actually into basketball this year, which was ironic because then they got cut short due to COVID. But big baseball fan, obviously, huge football fan. But I've said before, as you are all Detroit all the time, all Michigan all the time, I'm only rocking Michigan for baseball. I go back to Chicago for my football to watch the Bears constantly disappoint me. Not that you have much of a leg to stand on either, because the Lions and the Bears, it's just kind of like Lions and Bears, oh my. The Wizard of Oz got it correct.
Definitely an oh my kind of situation.
Yeah, but and then hockey. Hockey.
Hockey. It's actually really weird. I got much more into hockey after I moved out of Michigan. I was living in Philadelphia when I really kind of got into hockey, and it was because the Flyers were having a great season, and so I do always have a soft spot in my heart for the Philadelphia Flyers in that regard. But no, it's always been a Red Wings fan, and that was partially because it was also always easy to cheer for the Red Wings. There was never difficulty cheering for them, as they were always contending for the playoffs and making runs for cups.
Yeah, what's interesting, kind of on my end, is my grandfather coached hockey, so I'm not really big into hockey, and my dad played basketball, and he was very, very good at basketball when he played in high school, and I'm not a basketball guy. So it's like the two things that two of my biggest role models in life excel that I just did not take any interest in. So I don't know.
Does your dad still watch? Is your dad still really into basketball?
Yes, very much so. He's big. So NBA, he's not super big on. I guess he's a Bulls fan by definition, but he's not watching, NBA on TNT every night when the season's in full swing. Big college basketball fan though, and he's a massive Duke fan. Duke is his team. He loves who's it? That's Coach K, right? Yeah.
Mike.
I almost said Coach Q, but that's Quinville from the Blackhawks, who is no longer with the Blackhawks. So see, I know a little bit. I know enough.
There's some hockey knowledge.
I know a little bit of dinner party knowledge just to get me through the main course and into dessert. But don't ask me to stay for drinks, because I'll just embarrass myself with or without the talk of sport.
I would say, the sports don't matter at all in that regard.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. No, not at all. But yeah, everything's good. Hey, real quick, I know we got a bunch to get into today. Something cool, and I probably should have told you this before we started going. So obviously the baseball season, still not much going on. We're still kind of up in the air, and we've talked a bunch on the show before how there's been different kind of I guess the best word, things that you can watch to kind of things at your disposal that you can watch to kind of help pass the time go by. There's been the leagues, the virtual leagues. There's been whatever the franchise thing was on Twitch, and on at least up here for Comcast Sports Center, whatever the channel is now in Illinois, they've been showing old White Sox games and Cubs games. And I watch them from time to time just to kind of, pass the time, but I don't really take an invested interest because I know who wins. And yes, last night I was watching it, and it was very interesting. It was, I believe, game 1 or game 2 of the ALDS or CS. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was the White Sox versus the Red Sox. White Sox were beating the crap out of the Red Sox. So I'm imagining that was the year of 2005 when they wanted all the Sox, the White Sox, that is. And you know how there's the scroll at the bottom of, anything that you watch, the feed that kind of keeps you update on scores and news, things like that?
This.
The scroll that just popped up on ours? Absolutely. It was the scroll said the Detroit Tigers just signed manager Jim Leland to a 3-year deal.
Wow.
What a nice little throwback, huh? It was pretty cool. When I saw it, almost kind of gave me chills. When I saw it, I was like, damn, that was that long ago. So yeah, 2005.
Yeah. Wow. That's the weird thing about aging, right? Not to make this an aging podcast, but like time just compresses in that way that you're like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. That was like, that had to have been 3 years ago, because when you were, 15, your memory was about 3 years. That was about what you remembered. And so now it's just, that's what you think it is.
Yeah. I had, I don't think I've really said it on this show much, and I think you probably echo my thoughts, Alex, but Jim Leland, he's the man. He is Tiger royalty, in my opinion. I mean, he really kind of dug this team up from the ashes, and he got it going again. I love Gardy, but it'd be cool if Leland kind of came back. In this alternate world, maybe one would be crazy. I don't know how it would ever happen, but could you imagine a scenario where like Leland comes back and then Dombrowski comes back as the GM? I'm not saying this is ever happening, just a total hypothetical, but could you imagine that it'd be like, wow, let's go.
I want Dombrowski back so badly, but that's more to do with
a different discussion.
Current distaste of the general manager of the Detroit Tigers.
I have not really given my thoughts on him. But I'm not going to do them right now.
I'm much more vocal about my feelings on.
Oh, I have feelings.
I know.
My old Twitter. You can check my Twitter, and it won't fit the mold of this show in terms of the rating that we're going for. But I've got some strong thoughts about the gentleman who has the initials of AA, and not Alex Avila. I was a big Alex Avila fan.
Yeah, Alex is great.
It's his father. Yeah.
Let's bring Dave Dombrowski back, and we'll keep an Avila in the organization. But
Alex. Let's get Alex back first. Let's get Alex Avila back. I'd be down. Also, somehow keep Gardy. I love Gardy. I'm fine with Gardy's I think great. he's done the best he can with this just mess of a team that he has been handed at times. So I love Gardy.
Yeah, I would love to have seen what Gardy could have done with some of the rosters that preceded his arrival. Yeah, that didn't necessarily get it done in the way that we had hoped.
Essentially, I don't know when Gardy got the boot from Minnesota. I don't know if it was like an amicable split. I don't remember, but it would have been nice if the timing matched up. If once Leland left after the 2013 season, if Gardy came in at 2014.
Yeah, I think it's
because
speak of multiple timelines. It's a very different timeline.
Because I think we can all agree, Brad Ausmus, who?
Yeah,
that guy. He did something. He was in the organization. You mean Mr. Emotionless? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Now here we go. Yeah. But anyway, that's it. That's that.
But as you said, we do have a whole stack of things to get to today. So
yes.
we'll kind of dive right into it here in just a moment. So let's get things rolling with this talk of some front office furloughs, none from the Detroit Tigers organization. I just want to say that up top. But we have started to get some more teams announcing furloughs from their front office, including the Cubs announced pay cuts, but no furloughs starting June 1st. Pirates furloughed in business operations starting June 1st. Angels furloughed their entire player development staff and scouts. That is going to, in effect, mostly on June 1st, but those guys that are more directly working on the draft for the Angels will stay on through the draft and then be gone within less than a week of that. Yankees have told the ticketing staff that they're good through June 15th, but then there are, of course, other organizations like your Detroit Tigers who have announced that there will be no pay cuts or furloughs, that there aren't any in the plans. We have not gotten a new announcement from the Tigers since the announcement at the end of April from the Ilitch organization that they were going to take care of everybody, that they were a family in that way. But we have also heard from the Cardinals, Twins, and White Sox organizations that there will be no pay cuts or furloughs, that there are none on the horizon. And I think that is the right thing for these teams to be doing. Luke, thoughts on the front office furloughs that we've heard about?
I 100% agree. I mean, if these teams can avoid to having to furlough their employees, absolutely, that's the end goal. I mean, it doesn't matter what team you root for. We all don't, nobody wants to actively see people losing money or taking a pay cut. And if you do want to see that, I think you might be a psychopath, but to each their own. One thing I'm kind of curious about, though, is, and maybe I can talk a little bit more because I'm around the area, the Cubs have had a weird off season.
Yes.
God, they had a weird off season. Like, when I say I lived behind Wrigley Field, I lived behind Wrigley Field for about a year. I lived in Chicago from fall of 2018 to about fall of 2019. And I am not, some people are like, oh yeah, I live right by here. I live right by, I lived right. I could have been, if I had a ticket to a game, I could have been inside Wrigley Field within 2 minutes.
Wow.
Legitimately. And I can say that having lived around Wrigley for that year, it is a very vibrant and booming neighborhood in terms of money. I mean, there are bars everywhere. There are restaurants everywhere. There are merchandise stands to buy, Cubs gear everywhere. They just put up like a brand new apartment complex right across the street from Wrigley. So it's just so fascinating to me. And by the way, from everything I understand, at least, that is the Ricketts. From everything I have heard, it is the Ricketts who essentially kind of want to take Wrigleyville and turn it into this, like, it's the Cubs neighborhood. It almost kind of reminds me of, this might sound a little mean, but of Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life. Mm-hmm. How he wants to take the old building and loan and take that over so he can essentially have a monopoly on the entire town of Bedford Falls. The Ricketts essentially want a monopoly on everything on that area of the north side of Chicago. So it's just so fascinating to me that they've had to furlough employees or I think you said it was pay cuts with employees.
Pay cuts, yeah. It was something like 80% of the organization is taking a pay cut of about 20%.
Yeah. So I mean that's tough. That's a big pay cut to take. I mean, especially just for your regular 9-to-5ers and everything. That is a significant amount of money. So that's unfortunate. But you have the pay cuts, and then also the Ricketts were quite vocal this past season that they didn't go out and make a lot of moves. Mm-hmm. Like they did nothing in free agency and during the offseason. Now, granted, maybe they knew COVID-19 was coming. Maybe they had the in, and they're like,
there's a new conspiracy theory. It wasn't Bill Gates. It was the Ricketts.
Yeah, it was the Ricketts. Yeah, they were. It was all a ploy. I don't know, but yeah,
Cardinals fans agree.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It's just been very interesting to see kind of their mentality, because if you're around that area, you would think this place has to be booming. I mean, God, when you go into the stadium, I mean, all stadiums, the prices are outrageous for concessions now, but literally, I think just a regular can of Bud Light, 12-ounce bottle or whatever, was like $10. Hot dogs are like $7. I mean, concessions are through the roof. I mean, yeah. What's it? This might be a dumb question. What's the average beer? Like that's 12-ounce, right? Did I get that right? 20,
probably
12
or 16, probably
12 or 16. Right, yeah. So I mean, nothing. I mean, nothing. It's not like a tall boy or anything. It's the basic can, basic bottle of beer for like $10. And it's like, geez. So I mean, with that and anything you want to get in terms of like swag or merchandise and tickets alone, I mean, are fairly, expensive-ish to get in, especially when you got teams like the Cardinals coming into town. So yeah, I don't mean to make this like, what are the Cubs? What's going on with the Cubs? Because we're not a Cubs podcast, but it's just interesting to see. They've had they've made some interesting.
Yeah, we'll get into some of that a little bit later. Yeah. As we talk about kind of the finances of a lot of these teams, and that is definitely a sticking point between players and ownership as they look towards the 2020 season. But before we get into that, I would like to talk about this, a little bit of a fun article. Apparently, to make a little money, the Pensacola Blue Wahoos, a minor league team, have put their stadium on Airbnb. And so you can Airbnb yourself a minor league stadium for you and 10 friends, so up to 10 guests in one night. $1,500 for the night. You can take batting practice. You can do all those things. There is no kitchen available, so you will probably have to either buy the meal plan that they offer you, or you can bring in your own food if you would like. Luke, looking at this proposal, you gonna spend a night at the Pensacola Blue Wahoos?
I definitely would. And I definitely think that we should go back in time to when you got married in the fall of 2018. I believe it was August, correct? August 2018. And am I right on that? Was it August?
It was
September.
it's September 1st is when we got married. So
all right, yeah, I knew it was Labor Day weekend around there. I think we should go back in time, and we should do your bachelor party here.
It's not a terrible idea. Like this is like, I mean, just look at this view.
It's awesome.
Like that's an unbelievable view. Just to watch, like, can you imagine watching a baseball game in this stadium?
Mm-hmm.
I know it's really funny. They do not show you the actual like staying accommodations because apparently there's like one room that has like a real bed in it and then that sleeps two, and then there's bunk beds for four in a different room that they've put in for this. But like, look, just gorgeous Pensacola, nicely done.
Yeah, I would definitely, if I could get a group of 10, like if I was living near like Pensacola or anywhere in Florida, I could make this drive and bring 9 other people with me, I would do it in a heartbeat. Would I make a whole vacation around it? Probably not. But also for real, this would be a really fun thing if you were throwing a bachelor party.
Yeah, it really would be. Like it would be. We did. We went to Busch Stadium for my bachelor party, and it was it's a beautiful stadium to watch a game. You suggested a couple weeks ago that we do an episode where we talk about the beautiful stadiums, and now that we've got this video format, I think that's a really great episode for us to look at. And
I love stadiums and talking about them. That looks cool. I don't know. I would do it.
Yeah, it's just gorgeous. You think about the fun. You can take batting practice. That's allowed. Like the batting and the batting tunnels are open. You can go play catch on the infield. Now, obviously, you can't have any. If you only have 10 of you, you can't field a second team. So you can't really have a game in that sense.
Yeah, you could maybe go pick up rules and do 4-4 and have an all-time pitcher or a DH maybe.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're gonna go DH both sides anyway.
That's what we used to do when we played pickup games. Like, because it was very rare that you could get 18 people together on a random day in June during summer break. So if you were rocking with like an 8 to 9 man squad, like, all right, we'll do 4-4, and like this guy's the all-time DH because nobody wants to be all-time pitcher. That would just be a miserable way to spend your afternoon. But DHing, yeah, and it was always the guy who could hit bombs. So therefore, I was never the DH. I would be to go to the outfield and shag fly balls, and I'd say, done.
Got it. That's me. That's my role. I don't know, Luke. You were a pretty serious hitter in our theater department.
Yeah. How do I say this without being rude? A lot of the on both sides. You know what? Everyone tried. But you know what? When you're playing in a theater dodgeball league, I think almost anyone can. Not dodgeball, softball league. I think almost
pretty good
anyone.
at that too.
I was very good. It's always the miscellaneous stuff. It's like, I was really good in softball. I was really good in dodgeball. It's like, all right, but are you good at football or basketball? And it's like, no, I suck at those. No, but like those C kind of level things, B to C level sports. Yeah, I rock them. I actually am very good at dodgeball, which is a very weird factoid, but it's been a while since I played. But yeah, I loved their little softball leagues. And yes, I was not too bad. Everyone tried. God bless their hearts. They tried.
There was always an effort. Luke, you can say you were one of the best softball players in your college theater department. I regularly tell people that I was the best basketball player on my college lacrosse team. And so, really hanging my hat on that one. It was just because I was the tallest guy on the lacrosse team. Yeah. And as many of you know, when no one's good at basketball, the tallest guy is usually the best player.
Rebounds are a vital part of the game. Again, going back to basic dinner party conversations. I know that rebounds are vital. Boom. Let's move on to the main course.
And let's move on to the main course. Nice segue, Luke. Let's take a look at the 2020 return to baseball. Before we kind of dive into the two sticking points, just a couple of updates on what we know as at this point. There are two kind of main sticking points that we'll get into in just a moment. With that, thinking about health and safety and thinking about the kind of economics of the game. Those are the two big sticking points. And from what I've been reading, there's been not a whole lot of movement necessarily in the way of getting to an agreement, but we have started to see some more words from the players in terms of what they're looking for in changes to the proposal. And it looks like the timeline to get the deal done is the first weekend of June. That kind of seems to be what we get. There has been no firm deadline set as of yet, which may or may not be good in terms of the negotiations, but we are starting to see some of that traffic pick up. And so I think that over the next few days, we should start to see some real movement, either to the good or to the bad. And so hopefully we do start to see that movement. Luke, any thoughts before we dive into those two sticking points that we seem to be looking at?
So I'm looking at my phone right now. A week from today is May 31st. So 8 days from now is the 1st of June. Do we think that we need to know something by this time next week? I mean, I feel like
that seems to be the main crux of the conversation, is that something needs to be decided June 1st ish. Now, if we hit June 1st and we've had no traction whatsoever, the deal's not going to happen. But like if we hit June 1st and it looks like we can have something done by June 3rd, we're not way off the timeline. We're still able to kind of hit that July 4th start date. That is the goal ultimately.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like 3 weeks ago we ended a show and I was like, so we're going to hear something this week. And we were both like, oh yeah, absolutely. And here we are like 2 or 3 weeks later and we're both like, maybe next week. I mean, again, I talked about it on the Thursday show. We're running out of time. The calendar is no longer on our side. Time is no longer a friend of ours. We are now going up against it where it's very kind of short schedule in terms of like we're either going to get it done or we're not. So I would imagine that a week from now that we'll know something. Maybe it's like, it's not looking good or it's looking good. We just might need a few more days, but we're going to need to know something. Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to look at it. I think part of the reason why it feels like we kind of like got to a point where we're like, oh yeah, okay, it's going to happen. We've got this. And then now these past couple of weeks have really felt like maybe not. Maybe is because for that there was that little bit of time there where it felt like every 2 days there was a new proposal about how to get baseball started. And so then we like hit the final proposal and we just haven't been able to negotiate out those last we haven't been able to go those last few feet as of yet. We've gone 99 yards down the field. And that last yard's hard to pick up.
Yeah, need that 1 yard in the red zone. That's a really good point, because how long did we hear it's going to be in Arizona? Everyone's playing in Arizona this year. It's going to be all 30 teams. And then we heard, well, no, maybe not Arizona. Maybe it's going to be in Florida and Arizona, and they're going to travel. And then that got thrown out. Excuse me. And now it's the proposal we have now. So that's a really good kind of way to look at it. I don't know. I hope we get stuff going here. But I kind of said it on the show Thursday as well, as like at a certain point in time, it's like you don't want to be teased. Just, we just want to know, are we playing or not?
We just want an answer.
And we need to know because we have a podcast / now somewhat live show to run baseball.
Yeah, don't they know that we're trying to run a content calendar here? It is difficult to plan when we don't have a schedule.
What is the deal?
Yeah, and so I think one of the things one of the main sticking points is obviously about health and safety of the players. That is of utmost concern to everybody involved. Nobody wants to do this if it is going to be truly unsafe. I was reading an article about the German Bundesliga coming back, and one of their doctors, in talking about their health and safety protocols, in a memo that they sent out, said that we're not going to ever get it to zero. The risk will never be zero, but what you want to try and do is find an acceptable level of risk that weighs into consideration the importance of both the ability to play these games and how that factors into the economy at large. And I thought that was a nice way to think about it as well, is that there is economic activity to be generated even when playing games not in front of fans of people, not bringing people downtown. That still means that like people are more likely to order some dinner in. They're more likely to advertising dollars are going to start to churn. They're going to watch those types of, like there's economic activity to be generated just from us feeling better as a society because we have this escape to watch now. And so that's an important thing to weigh. Um, uh, Jess Rogers from ESPN had a really great quote in this article about the proposal that went out. So MLB's protocols inside team facilities call for major changes to previously normal routines, from no spitting, even showering allowed at the field, to the discontinued use of recovery equipment, such as hydrotherapy pools and cryotherapy chambers. Many aspects of day-to-day life would change. Even team buffets would be banned. And a lot of the players, one of the interesting sticking points to me is that the players feel that some of this stuff is going too far. And so while they do have concerns about their own health and safety, they also have concerns that maybe we're going too far in banning some of those things. And I don't know, for me, that seems like a good argument, that the argument the players are kind of making is that if we are testing regularly, if we're kind of following through on those things, maybe we've gone too far. Luke?
100% agree. I think I said it a few weeks ago. The spitting rule, so that they can't choose sunflower seeds and spit them. Like, come on, like how are you going to enforce that? Like, I don't know. I think there are certain things that are probably going too far. I could see maybe like the showering, cutting down on showers, things like that, because that just there's a lot of gross germs kind of floating around during that after playing a stinky game of baseball. But yeah, I mean, some of these things are probably a bit excessive. The one that comes to me, the no spitting, is that same thing with can you chew gum? I'm kind of confused about that. The big loss of all this is buffets. I'm a big buffet guy. Yeah. And not only I feel for the baseball players, because, if these multimillionaires aren't getting buffets, I'm not getting a buffet. So it's a tough shake there. But yeah, I mean, I could totally see some of these things are a little bit, probably you go like, really? We can't do, there's no one, there's no fans here. It's just us. Like, that's all it is. So yeah, I could see the showers one would be a big one that I would actually rule probably on the side of the major leagues. And just because, again, germs, grossness after a game. So I get that. The cryo or the recovery pools, the cryo chambers, which I've never done one of those, but I kind of am intrigued to do one. I'll tell you though, if I ever do one, I'm going to wear flip-flops and I'm not going to get frostbite on my feet because I'm not Antonio Brown. Thank God, by the way, I'm not Antonio Brown.
For many reasons.
For many reasons, yes. That's actually that one is actually like the most sane, and be like, oh yeah, of course you don't interview. Then you hear the other stuff he's done, you're like, oh my God, but that's another episode. Oh yeah. My God. But yeah, so I agree. I can see where the players are coming from. Some of these things do seem a bit excessive, probably a little bit over the top. Some of the things I'm with Major League Baseball on. So it's a pretty even 50-50 split. Hopefully they can kind of meet somewhere in the middle, which just kind of seems to be the overall motif right now is, yeah, can we all meet in the middle? Great. If we do, let's play baseball.
Yeah, with a lot of these, every article I read about kind of the disputes about these health and safety regulations has ultimately made sure to make note that both sides are like, this is not going to be the thing that doesn't get the deal done. Like we will sort through these issues. This is going to be easy. That's the easy part of it. And some of the things that the two kind of sides of this health and safety argument are that yes, the rapid style, everybody will be tested on the regular, and so theoretically you would know if somebody has become infected inside the bubble-ish of Major League Baseball. But the rapid style testing that they will need to deploy can bring false negatives. So someone could test negative who does in fact have the coronavirus, which is, obviously a point of concern. So from the doctor's side of things, that if we don't incorporate some of these other more restrictive items, we may end up with sort of a super spreader type event. And that's definitely something that every side wants to avoid. The other thing, and this was an interesting one, and I'm looking forward to your thoughts on this, is that one of the sticking points that people aren't really talking about is, can we trust especially some of the younger guys to be doing the right thing away from the clubhouse? And I think that's a really interesting argument. And I know that we both have friends that are taking social distancing more or less seriously, depending on kind of where they live and what that situation is. And then there are also people like that are actively going out. Someone's got to grocery shop, right? Like these guys have to get food at some point, and food has to come in, and and so that is also, there's always those points of contact. But is the person who goes to the grocery store, and I'm sure you see this at work, Luke, is the person that goes to the grocery store just going to the grocery store, or are they taking the time to browse the clothing section in Targets and to do kind of some of that other shopping that is not as necessary. So I mean, like, and I definitely, it was interesting that they called out the younger players, but I do think that that's true, that the younger somebody is, the less likely they are to take that portion of it seriously.
Yeah, and especially if they don't have like a wife or kids or whoever it may be at home, that they they don't want to put them at risk if they're living by themselves. Especially like I'm young, I'm invincible. It's so funny you say that, because I see it all the time. I've got friends who are taking the whole social distancing thing incredibly seriously, and I have other friends who think everything that's going on right now has been incredibly blown out of proportion. So I kind of see where like both sides are and see those different perspectives. I myself kind of more in the middle, but that's just kind of what I think. There's two sides of it all, and just do your thing. But to answer your question, something that's kind of interesting to note in terms of just this will kind of rely a little bit, I guess, geographically where certain places are. So I know up here in Illinois, we are definitely much more strict in terms of the lockdowns and the rephased openings and things of that nature. My mother recently just did some traveling down south to visit my grandparents and some other family members. And she told me that when she flew out of Midway, that everyone in Midway Airport had masks on. Social distancing was the thing. I'm pretty sure she said, with the exception of like one lone pizza kiosk, restaurants were closed, the bars were closed in the airport. Pretty much in terms of everything going on in the world right now, they were abiding by all of the guidelines and rules that have been put in place by the CDC officials, all that stuff.
My wife and I had a very similar experience flying out of New York.
I would imagine. And that's even bigger. Where'd you fly out of, JFK or LaGuardia?
LaGuardia.
Yeah, I mean, much bigger airport than Midway, but still, I mean, if you had the kind of same thing, that's interesting. And also that makes sense too, because New York, we've seen, the horror stories that have come out of New York from everything that's happened with coronavirus. However, my mom flew into Atlanta. She said when she landed in Atlanta, it was like a party. She said no one had masks on. The airport bars and restaurants packed. Wow. Bars were crowded. So, I mean, just right there, that's just kind of so are we going to have to worry more so about players maybe like the Braves, players in Florida, because we know everything's wide open in Florida on the Marlins and the Rays, Texas, another big one. I don't know. We'd kind of have to wait and see, but maybe it will determine a lot on the geographic location of where said teams are playing. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of teams in Chicago, like the Sox or the Cubs, they're not really going to have much of a choice. There's not much to be doing right now in Illinois, as we can both attest to. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I would hope that I totally am not. It's their lives, these players' lives. They have the right to do whatever they want, whatever they feel is appropriate and responsible. That is on them. I'm not going to cast judgment, but you would hope that if they're making millions and millions of dollars, and if they're told, hey, for the next 3 months, stay in, maybe meet up with a couple guys, like order some food, watch a movie, stay in. You don't need to be going to the bars. You don't need to be going to the beach. You don't need, again, it's their prerogative. Who am I to judge and say what they should or shouldn't be doing? I'm not trying to do that at all. I would just hope that when they have these massive contracts in front of them, and not only are they, affecting potentially themselves, but their players, and then there's players' families and things like that. I don't know. But then on the other side too, I can kind of see, maybe just because, like I've said, I've been around both sides of where people stand with everything with coronavirus. Then there's a part of that's kind of like, if they want to go out, let them go out. Like, it's only if they have to take responsibilities, so it's up to them. But then also, it's like the angel and the devil on your shoulder, giving you like your conscience and. But yeah, I don't know. I would hope they would be smart. That's the only thing I can ask for anybody. Whatever you do, you stay in, you go out, just be smart. I mean, even if you are going out, try not to be in someone's grill. Wash your hands, cover your face when you cough or sneeze. If you can, wear a face mask. I mean, I just went golfing, today before I did the show with my dad. I mean, granted, it was golfing. It was me and one other person. So, I mean, it's not like a mob party mosh pit, at the golf course. But even then, so we were still being safe. We were like, I don't know. I don't want to ramble, but more than I already do. But that's kind of my thought on the thing in a relation to baseball.
Yeah, and I definitely think it, like, for me, what this kind of point is really testing is I tend to come down on the side of athletes are not by definition role models. I think that many of them are, and I think that there are many great examples of athletes who have taken that portion of the responsibility of being a professional athlete onto their shoulders. But at the same time, we cannot assume that they should be role models just because they are a great athlete. And I would hope that many of these guys would realize that if Major League Baseball were to be one of the first major team sports to make a comeback, that they would be like, okay, we have to own this responsibility, and we have to make sure that we are doing all of the correct things. We're checking the boxes. We are just going to work, and we are coming home. We are wearing masks when we're not playing. We are washing our hands. We are doing all of those things. But we should not, as we make these plans about how to come back safely, we should not assume that they're going to do those things. And especially in areas where I think that's a really great point, Luke, like Atlanta and our Florida teams, and these teams in states that for whatever reason have looser restrictions than other places. Like, obviously the Yankees and the Mets are going to be living in situations where they are under significantly stricter social distancing guidelines just in their environment. And so, like, they're not going to have as many options to go out and do those things. But your Miami, all of your Marlins players, they could be on South Beach every night if they wanted to be, and the only people stopping them are themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's also and I guess there's maybe more of an argument for the players that would choose to go out and socialize and party and eat, drink, whatever you want to call it. Major League Baseball can be like, hey, we strongly recommend, or, maybe what we might see too, teams may just make it a rule like, hey, you can't go do this. I think I would imagine from everything I've seen, I've watched quite a few seasons of Hard Knocks in my day. And, when they're in preseason and training camp for the NFL, they've got curfews. They got to be in bed by 10. They got to be up. They can't, there's certain rules you have to abide by. Maybe that's what a lot of these teams do. But, then again, it's like, it would be different if we were doing this Arizona scenario where they're all in one place and it's like, hey, we go to the game, you guys can be out, but you got to be back in the hotel in your rooms by 9 o'clock. I don't know. That's just an example. How do you say that these guys who will be in Detroit and they have, that's their area that they're familiar with, they have friends who live there, they have family, like, it gets very kind of nitpicky. What do we allow and what don't we allow? And then also, if you look at just the state rules, if the state is saying you can go do these things, then why shouldn't you be able to do these things? Does that make sense? I mean, let's kind of talk about, I think we can talk about this. State of Illinois next week, phase 3 is reopening. That's at least what we've been told. And public gatherings of, I believe, no more than 10 people will now be allowed. So, I mean, we have already, with you and myself, you and me, sorry, I just totally had a brain fart there with words. You and me, along with some other friends, we've already made plans sometime in the beginning of June to hang out, as of now. So, because we've been told that is what we are allowed to do. So, I mean, if the state is telling us, why can't we do it? I feel like that's an excuse we could maybe see from players. But I think maybe if you just if the teams themselves put in like a strict rule, like, hey, no, you can't. If we find out, you're fined. Maybe that helps. I'm not too sure. It's very tricky.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to be the biggest thing in terms of the health argument. So the other and the main sticking point is the economic argument that we know that is the big sticking point between the players and the owners in terms of how compensation is going to work in this arena. And so what we have started seeing, that it has been reported that the March agreement between players and ownership, which players feel was kind of the final word on what they were going to get paid. Ownership feels otherwise. It does seem that there was an economic feasibility clause in that contract, whatever that means. No one has actually seen that language. And that's actually something that's been interesting as well, is that there have been reports of players whose agents have wanted to go look at the actual wording of the March agreement to kind of determine what that looks like, and they haven't been able to. So for whatever reason, from both sides, that agreement is kind of being shrouded in some darkness about what that's going to look like. And so I don't know if that is the MLBPA trying to cover themselves in some way, that they feel like they have not like looked at the language of the contract as closely as they should have, or that ownership doesn't want it to get out because it doesn't have this clause. I don't know who is kind of hiding the paperwork from people, but they seem to not be there. So one thing that last week, Luke, you took the side of ownership ultimately. And I think that there's definitely strong arguments for that. Jeff Passan from Passan, yeah. Passan
or Passan, that's what I'm going with.
I always read it. I don't really watch his talking head pieces. But either way,
Passan sounds good.
Passan. He was doing his weekly reporting on the idea of what that actually looks like. So the owners, it appears, are in a cash crunch. So they are in they have a liquidity problem. Whereas they don't have money coming in, and so money going out is hard on them. But what it isn't is it is not a solvency issue. Like, they have the money. It is just not necessarily sitting in a bank account like my money and your money. It is in assets of some kind, and so they don't have that cash that they may need. And so that's kind of their big sticking point in this whole thing. So their long-term finances are fine. We kind of touched on that a little bit last week, that like how does an owner lose this amount of money and recover from it? It does seem that the books of ownership could take this kind of hit. And so one of the central arguments here, Major League Baseball has never had a salary cap, and that ownership is attempting to kind of the players say ownership is trying to backdoor a salary cap into baseball using this event. And so the main sticking point, using Forbes data, and that's kind of the closest thing to publicly available data that we have for Major League Baseball teams. Forbes MLB owners claim an operating income of no more than $250 million every year, league wide. So that is the money that comes in on top of the fixed costs of operating the business. So this is the operating, we operate, this is the amount of money we make from operating. Forbes puts that number for last season closer to $1.5 billion. Now, there's reasons to think that the Forbes number is not 100% accurate, but it is not, 4 to 5 times wrong. It is, because when you compare Forbes numbers that they use in seasonal valuations to the information put out by the ownership, it lines up pretty accurately. And so to think that those numbers line up, but that Forbes has the amount of income that they make wrong, that doesn't seem right. So that's kind of the main sticking point, that these guys, the ownership is claiming a much tighter margin than exists, and there is no trust between ownership and players. And so here was the quote from the article that I really liked. So, Major League Baseball owners are really rich, and if they are cash poor and need to borrow money to pay employees and minor leaguers and major leaguers this season, they can and should. Wealth is often built on debt. This debt is an investment in the future of their asset. And I think Jeff nails it on the head there, is that playing the 2020 season, doing whatever it takes to make the 2020 season happen, is not only an investment in your players and their continued development in your organizations, but it's an investment in the future of the value of Major League Baseball. What are your thoughts here, Luke? I just went off on an economics lecture.
And that's, I'm really good with math and money and all that. I was a big economics guy in college. Everybody knows that about me. I love economics. That is a lot to take in. I would say that quote is interesting, and I tend to, although I kind of did take the side of ownership last week, I tend to agree with that quote from Jeff. It's it's one of those things where it's like, he makes a great point in saying that this has ramifications not only for this season, but potentially for seasons beyond. What I'm a bit concerned about, regardless if we have this, this season or not, and I guess, it must have been a staying point for previous seasons, and it might be a staying point for seasons to come, is that the trust issue between ownership and players. I understand it definitely kind of sounds weird in general when it's like, this person owns the right to have this person service their team or their product, whatever it might be. I know that definition alone sounds kind of like, this sounds a little,
I don't like this. Yeah.
I don't like this at all. Yeah. I don't like it. So that's kind of seeing that relationship already on itself is a little bit kind of, I don't know, fascinating. So yeah, I think that it will be, I feel like the owners are going to have to be the one that will budge ultimately, because although, and it's funny, last week I did take the side of the owners, but it's like the more I thought about it, it's like, maybe I should go with the players. Like it was I was very back and forth when you think about it kind of after the fact. But I do think the owners ultimately would be the ones that have to budge. I do. I think that it'll be things like that from Jeff Passan or Passan. We're going to find that out for next week.
We'll figure it out.
But we'll figure it out. But I think with them having so much funds, and even if he said that these owners are so rich, but even right now, if they are poor, they should be able to. And if they have the ability to pay their players, they should just pay them to get this over with. Essentially, the salary cap thing is kind of interesting. So baseball does not have a salary cap. That's what you're saying, but they want to move towards having a salary cap. At least I would say that's a thing on the side of ownership. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, owners want a salary cap.
Yeah, that's what I kind of surmised from everything you're saying. So, yeah, I think I don't know. I think you'll see the owners fold. And can I be honest here? This might kind of be a bit of a sidebar. All this stuff we're talking about right now. Like, is it worth it? Is it worth it for 80 games? Like, I almost want to say, like, figure your crap out, both sides. Figure out a number you can compromise on. Salary cap, no salary cap. Building your trust from your ownership to your front office down to your players. I mean, getting all your ducks in a row, so to speak. Get that figured out, and then let's talk about playing baseball. I mean, I know I'm usually kind of on the show. I'm always like, June baseball, it's going to happen. June baseball, it's going to happen. We're going to play baseball in 2020, and I really want that to be the case. But with all these things that you're saying, like, maybe we should just figure out, like, what's going on inside our own teams before we even consider having a game. Is it worth watching for these players to have to play a game and then they can't even spit sunflower seeds because it's against the rules? Is it worth it for us fans to be like, yeah, we can't go, so we'll just watch it on TV because everything that's going on? Is all this worth it at the end of the day? The finances, the logistics of it all, the shortened season, the weird and expanded playoffs. Is it worth it? I don't know. That's up. That's going to be ultimately up to the players, and we'll kind of find out. To me, start not to be worth it. Honestly, I mean, I miss baseball. I miss it dearly, but I don't know. This is almost getting a little like, God, now we got to get over this. Now we got to get over this thing, and next week it's what's it going to be next week? What issue are we going to have next week? Let's either come together, let's find a number that fits both sides. Let's compromise. Let's be adults here. Let's be human beings. Let's all give in a little bit, and let's find something that we can all agree upon, and let's move forward. And if not, let's not do it at all.
Yeah. Using the Forbes number, ownership has made a collective $5 billion over the last 5 seasons. And so there's certainly money in the bank in terms of, okay, maybe we're going to take it on the nose this season. But, if we take the loss this season and maybe into 2021, if we still are unable to have to play in empty stadiums. But so let's say ownership ultimately in the next 2 years gives back $2.5 billion that they made of that $5 billion. 5 years out from that, though, they're going to have made another $5 to $10 billion. And so,
yeah, it's a great point.
like they're going to be okay. And I think it's interesting, Luke, your point about figure your stuff out, ownership and organizations and teams. And I think that that's really interesting, because one of the things I wanted to bring into this is the kind of like broader sports landscape. As we look at that, it looks like we have a plan for the NBA to come back in mid-July. Yeah. And to me, now, certainly I don't follow the NBA anywhere close to like following baseball, but it sort of feels like that just kind of happened. Like they just kind of did it. And similarly with the NHL, the executive board of the Players Association just approved their plan to come back and finish the season and get us a Stanley Cup champion. And we also have NASCAR is already back up and running. There's all kinds of sports that their structure is such that they have figured out that relationship between ownership and players in a way that these types of things, there are certainly labor issues in the NBA. There are certainly labor issues in the NHL, but they never seem to get to the extent and kind of constant angst as there is between ownership in baseball and the players. And so I think that that's an interesting thing to consider, is that maybe what comes out of this is that ownership and players have figured out that they've got issues. This is going to hurt however we come through this, but hopefully we can come through this in a way that has established a trusting relationship. Because the biggest thing that players complain about, and the Players Association in baseball complains about, is that the owners never open their books because they don't have to, because there's not a revenue split. And so then, but then when owners propose a revenue split in this scenario, that's not gonna, like, they're like, okay, you have to open your books, but we don't actually trust you. We have Forbes reporting that you made $1.5 billion and the rest of their numbers seem correct based on what you've given us. But then you tell me that you only made $250 million. Something weird is happening in that math. And I don't trust you to tell me that. So we need an independent audit. We need something from the outside. And there's certainly not time for any of that between now and June 1st.
We can't worry about audits right now. Let's not go there. One thing I think is interesting, how you kind of said, we might take the hit in 2020 and maybe even into 2021. God, I hope if honestly, if 2021 rolls around and we're still doing this just with baseball, I'm probably going to quit the show. I'm going to be like, dude, there's nothing left to talk. I can't ramble anymore. It'll just be
everybody.
Yeah. But I seriously don't think that will be the case come next year. I think things will be better. I'll just say that. Things will be better. We'll be able to go to sporting games. We'll be able to go to events. We'll be able to kind of get back to our way of life that we were used to living before all this. And I think there's going to be such a high demand to do activities like that. It would almost behoove the owners a little bit to maybe give in more this season, take the loss. Like we've said, we've already said that the owners are going to take it on the chin this year. So just take the hit, say this sucks now, but play the long game. Because I'm guaranteeing you, once we're all through this and it's safe to go back out everywhere, not just in Georgia and Florida and even Illinois and Pritzker and Lightfoot are like, hey, go out, have fun, go crazy. When we're all on that same page, I think there's going to be such a high demand for people wanting to go to baseball games, for people I'd be really curious to see when it comes back, when baseball comes back and we can go to games, what the spike in season ticket packages will look like.
Yeah.
I'd be really curious to see that. So I think it really would. It might benefit the owners in this scenario. Be like, you know what? You're right. We're going to give in. We're going to try to meet the players where they're more comfortable. And then hopefully we can move on with 2020 and think about 2021 and 2022. Right now, it is so easy to get brought down with everything that's going on, because this is all anyone's talking about is coronavirus. So it's just negative and negative and negative and negative. There will be a world after coronavirus someday, and you can start kind of planning and pinpointing maybe how you, I don't want to say capitalize because that sounds kind of shady, but like how do you move on past coronavirus too? If you act real scummy and kind of sleazy throughout this, and then we get out of it eventually, players could be like, well, in a time of kind of panic and crisis, you guys screwed us over. So why would we want to play ball, no pun intended, with you all right now? I don't know, just something to kind of think of. Maybe the owners really need to kind of start thinking of like, this is going to be a real crappy time, but there will be a way out eventually. And when people can go to games, we know we're going to make our money back and then some.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the biggest thing is that like right now you have the opportunity to remind people how great a competitive baseball game is and how much fun it is to be there with your team when they hit that walk-off in the ninth. And because right now we're watching NASCAR races and so that's like NASCAR. The thing about owning the airwaves is that NASCAR, for a race at Darlington, their first race back, it was the highest rated NASCAR race outside of the Daytona 500, which is literally the Super Bowl of NASCAR. And so considering how high those ratings are, but it was the highest rated race since 2017. Wow. And so that is a sport that has been on the decline in viewership. And baseball is also a sport where there's been a decline in viewership. And so here is an opportunity, owners, for you to give a little bit to the players and say, hey, what does it take? And I think that ownership has opened up an argument that they didn't need to open up. They could have proposed this, hey, we agreed in March to the prorated salaries, and so we're going to come back with all this. Here's all this health and safety investment we're going to make, and we're going to pay you half your salaries for playing half the games, and away we go. And that could have happened, and ownership made the choice not to try and get greedy, even though they've made $5 billion over the last 5 years.
Yeah, can I flip-flop my answer and be on the players this week?
Yeah,
because now I'm kind of a little bit on the players, just because like it just seems like it would just be smarter for, I don't know, it just seems like smarter for the owners now to be like, let's give in and let's remember that there is a world, there will be baseball past 2020, and we're gonna make money hand over fist when that time comes. I can kind of I can see a little bit of like the owner's perspective a little bit, but I don't know. I'm kind of with the players. Check out me next week. See where I'm at next week.
We'll see. Yeah. Well, hopefully next week we're talking about a deal.
Yeah, we have good news. That'd be good. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm with the players for real. I think. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny how a 15-minute conversation can kind of sway your vote, but I don't know. I at least in this moment in time, I can see where the players are coming from. And that's all I got. Who knows? Next week, who knows what side I'll be on next week. So tune in for that.
Yeah. Next week is on the side of the umpires.
Yeah. Next week I'm on the side of the fans. We're like, we just want to watch baseball.
Can we just watch baseball? Please?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Absolutely.
Well, hopefully that will happen. And Luke, thank you again for this wonderful week. And those of you seeing the video episode for the first time, those of you listening who download the show in your ears, we do now have a video version of the show that is on our Facebook and YouTube channels, and you can check that out. Those of you that are watching the video, I think this is the point where we're supposed to say like and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. I think on YouTube there's a little bell that you can click that'll alert you. Facebook, you can also set up the alerts, all of those good things. Do those things because we will be coming to you a little bit throughout the week every now and then when there is news to report. So hopefully we will have some good news to talk about either this time next week or sooner than that.
Yeah. Good news. Let's have more positive, good news. Everyone be nice to each other, and owners and players get along. It's like a family reunion. It's dysfunctional.
Yeah, we were definitely less angry this week, which was good.
I think it's because I'm tired.
Yeah, we'll take that. I'm
tired. Maybe that's the key for people who are like, I didn't like this show last week. Luke was too angry. I'll just have to start napping before. Wait, I'll take my naps after the show.
Take a nap after. That's the way to do it.
Right when we end, I can conk out. So no, it was a good episode this week. A lot of fun stuff. And let's hope next week that we've got a big story to talk about, that we've reached an agreement and we're gonna get some baseball. So here's hoping.
Just love some answers. All right, Luke. We'll see you next week.
See you, buddy.